Hey, ANPers, this is Dr. Jones checking in. This is ANP 1 Lecture Test 2 Video 5. And we are in the middle of page 8 where the charts start. So, name that tissue. We've already had this in lab. This is on the lab test that you're about to take or have just taken, depending on schedule. So, what is it? That's right, areolar CT. The function here, padding and independent free movement. And the locations, dermis, under the epithelia, between muscles, around the blood vessels and nerves. And as you can see, I've got places for you to draw these things. So, and then the first bullet is always going to be the functions. That's how you write function in math. It's a calculus term, actually. So our lowercase cursive curvy f function. And then the location. It's the locodermis. All right, name that tissue. You got it? Adipose CT. This was on the lab list also. Functions, padding, insulation, energy storage, found in the hypodermis and surrounding the viscera. The kidney is actually in a fibrous connective tissue pouch packed with adipose CT. And so that acts as padding and to protect the very delicate kidneys. Okay, padding, insulation, absorbs shock, and of course energy storage, which was already on there, never mind. Okay, this one was not a lab term, so no cutesy quizzes, just telling you this is reticular connective tissue. It's a supporting framework of soft organs. It has reticular fibers in them, as you can see. And it's found in liver, spleen, lymph nodes, bone marrow, around the blood vessels, things like that. What are the differences between white fat and brown fat? Yeah, I don't have a slide for this. So the previous edition of the book said that babies have brown fat and adults don't. But they have since changed the textbook. So that's always fun when we learn new things. White fat is our normal adipocytes, adipose CT. Brown fat is highly vascular, has lots of mitochondria, and can actually generate heat. And they do think that there's a correlation between a lack of the brown fat and obesity, but they're not sure if it's a causal or correlative relationship. So what's the difference between correlation and causation? Causation is cause and effect. If I drop the pen, it will fall. Cause, effect, cause and effect. So that's a causative relationship. A correlative relationship is if I drop the pencil, the pen will fall. Well, the pen fell because I dropped the pen, not because I dropped the pencil. It just happens that I'm doing them at the same time. But it's not a causative relationship, it's a correlation. And you can find interesting correlations with, the price of tea in China can go up the same time other things go up, and it's not necessarily causative, even though it correlates. In fact, sometimes they will get the causative relationships backwards, like the old Facebook birthday joke. Studies show that people who have more birthdays live longer. So it's a correlation, it's not a causation. In fact, the causative effect goes the other direction. Living longer causes you to have more birthdays, assuming the longer is past a birthday. So that's the difference between correlation and causation. The last I saw, there was a correlation between a lack of brown fat and obesity, but they had not yet proven a causation. Of course, I haven't looked it up this year, so who knows. It'd be an interesting question for an extra credit essay. All right, so next. Oh, no, that was a white fat and brown fat. If adult adipocytes, we'll stay on this picture, are incapable of dividing, also adult adipocytes are incapable of dividing. So given that adult adipocytes are incapable of dividing, why is liposuction a risky waste of money? Whoa, there we go. And this is why. The areolar CT can change into adipose CT. So if you have areolar CT hanging out and you have extra fat that needs stored, the areolar CT will helpfully turn into adipose CT. It will just build more adipocytes. It already has some, and it'll just build a boatload more, hopefully, so that you can store those adipocytes. Plus these mesenchymal stem cells, wherever they are in there, can divide and differentiate out into more adipocytes. So, and anytime you have surgery, there's a risk of bleeding and infection. So if it's necessary, it's necessary. If it's not necessary, then it's not necessary. If it were a permanent fix and not a temporary fix, it would be a different thing. So, all right, so let's talk about these terms on the top of page 9, audible page flip noises. That's a thing, right? My kids are always like, audible something. Insert any kind of term you can think of, noises. I guess that's a thing. Okay, so collagenous tissues are, collagenous is just the adjective form of collagen. So these are dense CT that are mostly collagen. So that'll be the dense regular CT and the dense irregular CT. Tendons are dense regular CT that connects muscle to bone. And there's no point in your life after this moment that you do not need to know that tendons connect muscle to bone. Ligaments, also dense regular CT, but they connect bone to bone. And again, as a healthcare provider, there is 0 days after today that you do not need to know that ligaments connect bone to bone. And aponeurosis is a flat sheet of tendon, so also dense regular CT. And we will have 2 aponeuroses in the muscle section in lab. We'll have an epicranial aponeurosis on the top of the head and a plantar aponeurosis. I'm pointing at the bottom of my foot, which you can't see. A capsule. Wait, did I skip? Are they not? They're not in the same room. Okay. Capsule is next on the lecture list, so we'll go with that. It's dense irregular CT, which surrounds an organ or joint. I told you about the capsule that surrounds the kidney. That's what it is. It's dense irregular CT. Dense regular CT, all of the collagen fibers are the same direction, and that helps support a pull from one direction, whereas the dense irregular CTs go like literally every direction, like 3-dimensionally, and so that helps support from a pull in any direction. Okay, so perichondrium, peri means around, like periscope helps you look around. Chondro means cartilage, so perichondrium is around cartilage. It is dense irregular CT that surrounds the outside of the cartilage, like the wrapper on a Tootsie Roll. It just all the way around it. Surrounds it. Just a thin layer. And same with the periosteum, except osteo means bone. So periosteum is dense irregular CT around bone. And the elastic ligaments are, of course, elastic tissue, and they're found which is elastic fibers, and they stabilize the vertebrae. All right. Name that tissue. I can't believe it's not bacon. You got it. Dense, regular CT resists a pull from one direction, found in tendons, ligaments, aponeuroses, and the deep fascia. Okay, this one we did not do in lab. This is dense, irregular CT. It's the same collagen fibers, it's just that this picture uses a different stain. So that's why it's a different color. And it resists a pull in any direction. It prevents overexpansion. And it's found in the capsules, the dermis, perichondria, and periostea, as we just wrote down. And elastic connective tissue stabilizes position, cushion shocks, locations, the elastic ligaments that we've talked about. They're found between the vertebrae, supporting the penis, supporting transitional epithelia, and the blood vessel walls. So everywhere you find elastic ligaments. All right, and the fascia, I need to find the picture of the fascia because that was supposed to be next, and it isn't. Okay. I thought I'd fix that, sorry. So here are the layers of fascia. Let me turn the pen back on. Let's do, why not green? We haven't done green in a while. So the superficial fascia is the subcutaneous layer. So it is the subcutaneous layer. It is the hypodermis. It's deep to the dermis. It's another term, a third term for something. We've already learned these two terms. Did learn those, didn't we? Okay, so it's between the dermis and the organs. The deep fascia surrounds the muscles, and the subserous fascia, so you have the serous membrane and then the subserous fascia. So it's between the muscles and like the parietal pleura, the parietal peritoneum, parietal pericardium. And the deep fascia of a muscle blends into the tendon, which blends into the periosteum. I thought I had a timer going. I really thought I started a timer. What happened with, I pulled up the 20-minute timer and never hit start. Yeah, that happens. So that finishes page 9. So we'll call it there, and we will start, let me write that down just a second, 8 and 9. And so we will start video 6 with Noteset page 10. Thank you as always for tuning in. It's good to virtually see you here. Glad you could make it. Hope you learned a lot. And the education must go on. Dr. J out.